Hey folks, Shane Getson here. Looks like we're coming to another year-end review. Some folks have asked me, what have you been working on? What are some of these special projects that you're working with? How's the corridors going? What's some of the legislation that you worked on? Who have you met? What is the significance of the U.S. elections? How is it impacting us? So I thought what I'd try to do, I sketched out a few things here just to go basically month by month from the year, because looking back, it was just like drinking from the fire hose. There was a lot of stuff that happened. So obviously last year, right around February, we brought out the budget. So for us, budget is highly intensive. What happens when that's brought forward in the House, we have deliberations on each one of the committees. So I chair one of the major committees there. We had 9 different sessions, 9 meetings, if you would, with 9 different departments going over budgets, inclusive of the Premier's budget as well. So I'm not going to lie to you, actually this was pretty fun. The Leader of the Opposition was the key person that was inquiring or interviewing the Premier essentially on her budget. So pretty humble for me, being a farm boy, to be the chair of this committee meeting, of which I'm calling to order essentially, or setting the tone in that whole meeting room with the former Premier who was and leader at the time, Rachel Notley, who was interviewing Danielle Smith on her budget, who is the current Premier and my boss. It was pretty neat. I had a lot of fun in there, and what I did basically at the tone of the meeting to set it was I advised everybody that it wasn't going to be ran like the legislature, it wasn't like question period, we ran it like a boardroom, and it worked perfectly. There was no points of order, none of those type of things taking place. Went through all of that. Budget came out. That was a big show and tell in the House. It's a big day when we have the budget. And what we had managed, again, Minister Horner did a phenomenal job, him and his team, to have another balanced budget for what we're looking at in 2024. March, there was a ton of town halls that we started getting into. So we were talking about the Alberta pension plan at the time. There was a bunch of that hitting the news. So I was one of the few MLAs that went out there and talked to my constituents on it. Got a real good feedback from the folks in my area, gave them the information that we had. There was only a few detractors that were speaking against it. In our area, it was about 98% of the folks who were actually wanting us to go further with it. And for everyone's edification out there, where we're at in that cycle right now is we're still waiting to hear back from the feds of their actuary on those numbers. So we managed to do that. There was always the what matters to you columns. So that was taking information that came in through our offices, queries, questions, etc. And we tried to cover off as much as we could in a little local newspaper, covering off items that were salient to you, what's going on. Continue to do that. Continue to please send in your questions and your comments and suggestions, and then also try to give you an idea of what's going on in and around working in the House. Gun shows, love those gun shows. Was out there again here this last weekend, and back in March there was another big one. Had tons of interaction with folks at those areas. Really great way to interface, and obviously the folks that have the firearms were very much interested in making sure that you still have the ability to have those. And rest assured, with our current Bill of Rights, we've mentioned that here, the Bill of Rights amendment that we brought forward here recently about responsible firearm ownership. CSG Midwest. So this is the Council of State Governments. The Midwest region is one of our largest trading regions in the United States. Bulk of our materials actually follow the pipeline routes down to that area. We had senators up from Chicago, Illinois. We had a senator up from Michigan, another one from Nebraska, and then we had a former minister from Manitoba out here as well. So what we did on these exchanges when we bring these folks up here, through the Council of State Governments, it's reciprocal. We get a chance to visit their legislators, we get a chance to visit their areas and regions and talk about policy, what matters to both different trade jurisdictions. So these fellows came up in our area, we got to show them around for a couple of days. Now, if anyone's ever had any friends or colleagues from the States, you know they're absolutely patriotic folks. God bless the USA, God bless those folks for doing that. They're so patriotic. To get an American to wave another flag, I don't know if you'd have to do that at gunpoint, but it's a pretty tough sell to do that because, again, they're America's number one. So at the end of this 2 days, I had our colleagues up on stage, and we had a town hall essentially, and had local business community leaders come out, some of the local businesses, etc., out at Superior, or Supreme Steel, I should say. And again, shout out to the Supreme Steel family for giving us that venue. So picture it. You got legislators from the U.S. up on a stage. I'm holding the mic. We got a room of about 100 people, and I've got on the screen and behind them the nice Alberta flag waving. So what we did was kind of a what matters to you town hall style. We asked them questions about what they'd learned in the area, what they found out about the province, what they had learned about our industries and our universities, etc., that we had taken them to. And it was resounding positive things. They were talking about the energy, but they weren't talking about literally the energy that we produced. They were talking about the energy of the crowds, the people they interacted with, the technological prowess we had. They were absolutely stoked and fired up from what was going on out here. Immediately they're switching to collaboration, how they can work, make policies work, how they can tell our story to their colleagues down south, and how we can connect our businesses. So for me, working on those economic corridors, tying in trade jurisdictions and regions, this was huge. So as a parting gift, what I'd done is given them some ball caps from my constituency, and then I took some medium-sized Alberta flags, and I had our caucus sign off on these flags. And God's honest truth, no word of a lie, no prompting, no request or anything else. When I handed these gentlemen, these senators from the United States, our flag, organically they got up on stage, stood up, and started waving our flag. Now, again, when you're starting to make an impression like that, that goes a long ways. There's lots of really good friendships and relationships there, and that translates into business and policies that we have, and making sure that there's that intergovernmental cooperation. Of course, that's very salient after the elections that took place in the fall. So then we had also parliamentary, our secretaries, or parliamentary secretaries. We did a little bit of a coordination thing here as well with them. Went over all of their portfolios. So I'm the Parliamentary Secretary for Economic Corridor Development. MLA Hunter is the Parliamentary Secretary for Agri-Food Corridor Development. We have Parliamentary Secretary Tanny Yao. He's working on northern businesses. We have 2 Parliamentary Secretaries on health. So you kind of get the idea. There's a bunch of MLAs that have additional roles. So we're coordinating all those efforts to make sure they're working well with the departments, and quite frankly, to get the maximum effort out of our team to make sure that you, the constituents, have someone to talk to, and also for them to help out with help the ministers out, quite frankly, and along to their roles. So if the minister can't make it to one of these outings, you literally have that next string of politicians right behind them that can work on that file and help out folks in that regard. We also went to a big prayer breakfast. So Billy Graham, his grandson came up, and this gentleman was one of the neatest preachers that I've ever heard speak, because he used to be special forces in the military, in the U.S. military. So he brought a operational context to what it was to be a good Christian, what it was to serve your community. That one was pretty outstanding, and we had a number of constituents and folks from across the province that came up for that. I think we had about 600 some odd people there. The other thing I managed to make up was a couple clocks. Now, it sounds kind of funny, but when I was out in the constituency and you look at some of the things that are useful, and as an MLA, we try to give back to the community, and because it's your tax dollars. And there's swag or those different things, right? Whether it's a coffee cup or a ball cap. But I'd noticed that over the time, a bunch of these old clocks were out there from some of the ministers from days gone by. So we made up a pattern with the provincial logos on it. Anyway, long and the short, we kind of tested the market out there to see who was interested in these things. A ton of people threw their hands up. So I thought, what better way to do it than to make sure that the little community centers and the town halls and the businesses out in the area that were going above and beyond, that we gave them an opportunity to go out and visit with them. And if they invited us, we brought them and gave them a clock. So proudly to say that we went around clocking up the place. And if you're interested in one of those clocks to hang in your wall, give us a shout in the office. We'll do that as well. Premier's dinner was on April 16th. We had over 1,300 people here in Edmonton. And I was asked to MC that event. It was the first time I've spoken to a crowd that big. It was pretty neat to see all these folks coming together in that area. And we had a lot of conversations, and then afterwards I was up on stage with Premier, also Minister Nally and Minister Glubish, and answering questions from the audience live. And it was really neat to see that little old-fashioned town hall atmosphere in a big room in the Edmonton Convention Centre, alive and well. And Premier and the ministers did a phenomenal job of answering questions. And yeah, I got to answer several of them as well, so that was a lot of fun. Right around that May timeline, we wrapped up the school, or not the school, I'm sorry, the session, and then met with a bunch of school boards. We had the concept of Fortress North America was flown out there. The Premier had done a few interviews, and that started to take hold. So I was really pleased with that, because then we rolled into some more Pennoir events. So again, Pacific Northwest Economic Region, and more of those councils of state governments. So all of a sudden, our colleagues across the border from the southern border there in the U.S. start understanding how Alberta is poised to be a strong player for North American independence on a number of files, predominantly with Canada, the U.S., of strengthening and onshoring. We also did the Rainmaker Parade. Now, if you've never been out to St. Albert, you got to go out there. So they have this big rodeo that's every year, big fan of rodeos. one of the only sports you can't fake. There's no question, you can't get the cows to coordinate with you, or the horses, right? So you can't get them in that if you're ever doing any side bets. It's kind of the running joke in my family. You can tell if a bull rider is going to make it or not. They're not faking it, they're on this thing. So get a chance, go to one of your little local rodeos, big bang for your buck, high family value entertainment, and good, honest, genuine athletes out there, both from the stock and from the riders. So anyway, we get a chance every year, and thank you to the folks that donated their horses to let us ride them. So we rode the horses, the ponies in the parade. We had a truck out there. We had people out with flags waving and everything else. One of the best patriotic things you could ever see is come out to that rodeo, and managed to get Minister Nally up on the horse again this year. And he's not a cowboy from a background, so getting one of those city slicker MLAs out on a horse and interfacing like that, it was quite the treat. And since everyone was such good participants, I took them through the drive-through and the Dairy Queen. So yep, we took the ponies through the drive-through and the Dairy Queen. So if you're out next year, maybe if you see us out there, we'll buy you an ice cream there too. Then we're up in the Marathorpe Parade. We did that one. I took Tammy Taylor up for a flight. So folks that know that I fly my aircraft, and when I'm out flying around, I take a lot of pictures oftentimes of the constituency. And one of our local artists, so she's studied with the likes of Robert Bateman, those type of groups. She goes out to the Vancouver Art Museum. She has her stuff on display. She's world renowned in that context. Took her up in the plane, and I had her a couple of years ago take some pictures. I'd taken pictures from the plane. She took an artistic impression, made these paintings up, and being a wildlife photographer, we started talking about the corridor concept of how you have roads and infrastructure integrated with the farming and other activities out there. And then she took and threw in the wildlife thing. So now she's got these paintings out there that have sandhill cranes, Canada geese, the pelicans out in the area, the big eagle that was out over Lac St. Anne's. She's managed to put this in place with these wonderful paintings of pictures that we had taken, and then took her up for a flight as an appreciation for that. So expect some more paintings in that series out here in God's country to be out there for the next year. So it's pretty fired up about that. Managed to make it to K-Days. Did those events, so it was pancake flipping out there. Also at Heritage Days. They asked me to be a food judge at Heritage Days. So you've got all the different cultures in the world that are there. The tapestry that we have in Alberta is amazing, and Edmonton is known as a festival city. This is one of them. If you've never been there, please go. So the event ran for three days, I believe. I was there for one of them. We went everywhere. Had a golf cart. I was wearing a cowboy hat, a Hawaiian shirt, jeans and boots. I was going for the doc off of MASH, his look, their old Hawkeye Pierce. And I met so many really good people brought in, and we were supposed to just go and taste and sample and go on, but everyone was so welcoming. I think we stretched this day out an extra four hours in total, because we were just visiting with so many folks. Stuffed to the gills. It was awesome, and made a lot of new friends and follow-ups from there. Was also asked to go down to North Dakota to present at the Ports to Plains Conference, and that's literally bringing in highways and infrastructure and major corridors from Texas all the way up into our borders, and then up to that Lac La Biche country. One sad thing that happened, obviously, was Jasper. So we were out in a conference in Vancouver for the Pacific Northwest, presenting on these corridors, and I'm getting texts and phone calls from the Premier of what was taking place back in Jasper. So literally went from pitching what we have to offer out here to getting back the next day, driving out with the Premier and several of the ministers, inclusive of the parks folks, and then the Mayor of Jasper, to go back into that area. So spent a week and change working on trying to help out and behind the scenes for all the folks in Jasper, to put that in context, and then obviously continued support on some of the emergency calls that were taking place. And part of that council as well. Premier's added me to that. So obviously a lot of things taking place. Big shout out to the folks out in Valemont. Was coordinating with the mayor out there as well, and some in Kamloops, because they opened their arms and welcomed folks from Jasper there. So it was back in and about in those areas. So again, our hearts go out to the folks in Jasper. If you get a chance, anyone this winter, please go out there and spend some time in Jasper, throw some cash back in that local economy, and help out the folks there where you can. And obviously there's ongoing efforts there all along. So I was down in Ports to Plains in North Dakota, presented there, jumped on a plane, and then went down to Oklahoma. And myself and MLA DeYoung, we sit on the Energy Council. So we have Minister Jean and Minister Newdorf, and then Chantel and I were both parliamentary secretaries. So again, sitting down on there, it's quite an honor, quite honestly. Like, this is an older organization. It's been around for a while. It's all the U.S. Energy producing states, and then Alberta and Saskatchewan. So again, birds of a feather, essentially in that regard, talking about the environment, talking about energy, talking about policy, and then looking for some collaborative efforts. There's a senator out of Wyoming there, out by Hewlett, just out where the Devil's Tower is. If anyone's familiar with the area, he's trying to pull together several of us so we can work on some energy solutions, and also looking at extraction from rare earth elements and minerals from brine. So we're looking at tying our universities in together. Look forward to a few more things there. Also was sent down to Madison, Wisconsin for a leadership training course. As one representative, graduate of West Point, so if anybody knows about that, that's what he did in his prior life. So he was an officer in the U.S. military, and very prestigious to go to West Point. He was one of my fellow participants. The way he put it was this training that we went through was like legislative boot camp. It's intensive training. You're stuck with these people. You're working 15, 16 hours a day, and just learning tons of skills and techniques, and nonpartisan in that context. One of the best leadership training courses I've ever been on. So from that, now we have these connections from these other folks that are very like-minded in those areas, and got to learn all the counterpoints of folks that maybe didn't have the same opinions and views. But really in that context, it showed, as legislators, if we do the right things, you can open your ears and maybe close your mouth a little bit more, listen to other perspectives, and come up with a solution. Everyone, if you can agree on what the problem is, maybe the solution is a little bit different when you first approach it, but if you're open-minded and talking about things and collaborative, it tends to go a long way. So that was pretty phenomenal. We did an air tour, again with the aircraft this year. I wasn't leading it, which was kind of a nice treat, quite honestly. Visited a bunch of communities and locations in the north, and talked to a bunch of kids out there as always, and also got a chance to shake the hands of some of those chopper pilots that were doing all that firefighting, and especially in the night tack at night, which was really good. We had a delegation from Germany come here as well. So last October I was over in Germany and talking about the energy transition file and what was going on there. We had a delegation come over here this year. It was the Secretary of Energy and Environment, and we had a roundtable discussion with a bunch of industry leaders, not-for-profit groups, environmental groups, everybody. Very collaborative, took place down in Calgary. So I chaired that with her for a couple hours. I believe that she left with a different impression of when she first came. And it comes down to you can't fake authenticity, and you have to put your best foot forward and talk to folks. And the way we ran the meeting was, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We put it all on the table. We talked about things that we could do better, things that we've not done so well in the past, what our vision is, where we're going forward. And to her surprise, and a number of her colleagues as well, we're more in alignment than what they ever could have believed. So again, the reason why we go on the road and why we interface with these different groups and delegations is literally to tell our story, to have folks not only listen to us when we visit them in their backyards, but to reciprocate and have them here. The Calgary Stampede is a phenomenal thing that we do there. It's the greatest outdoor show on earth. I tell everybody that. And we had a big showing of U.S. delegates there again as well. One of the ambassador from the U.S. to Canada was there, and specifically this gentleman, he gave one of the most glowing reports of what Alberta is from the U.S. perspective. He couldn't have done any better than what our Premier did. It was outstanding. So to know that these folks are out there, they're on our corners. He came up afterwards after he gave his speech, and I was pretty flattered by this. He asked if I was that economic corridors guy, and absolutely, and he gave me his challenge coin. And the following day at breakfast, him and I ended up sitting together, and I gave him my lapel pin, and he exchanged mine for his as well. So we're making a lot of really good connections there, and folks really know our story and what we're doing here. Premier had sent me over to Iceland. That was in October of this year, and it was for the Arctic Circle conference over there. So essentially all the Arctic nations, and to my surprise, folks from all over the world come here. I was really surprised over a 4-day event to find the likes of China, Japan, Singapore, India, all at this Arctic Circle conference talking about what they have to do in the Arctic, where their stakes are, where their interests are. Very interesting to see it from a geopolitical standpoint of what's taking place over in Europe, how the Arctic really is opening up, how there's 3 shipping routes, there's not just one anymore, how the movement of the oil that was embargoed from Russia is making it to market. They had the head of NATO there talking about, both in the context of military operations and alliances and strategic locations, rare earth elements, minerals, and critical processing, those type of things. The amount of money that's going to have to be spent up in the north to make sure the infrastructure is there. Talking about the environment, talking about access to minerals, talking about friendshoring, doing those things. The second day it started to sink in, and I'm at this business conference, and they're all talking about issues and challenges they're having of getting together and do these things. And finally I threw my hand up and basically said, well, come to Alberta. We're the gateway to the north. You guys can all fly here. We're, literally that landing point of how everybody went up north in the past. Why are we not doing it now? And pitched what we had to offer and the energy security, all those type of things, plus the engineering prowess, the industrial complex, all of these type of things. That literally round of applause from 200 people. So keep your ears open. We're going to try to put something together here probably in the spring to invite folks from around the world back to our backyard, pick about 4 or 5 things that we can really work well on in that context, and even to the fact of maybe building some components for icebreakers, because that's what we do here. We make things and we get her done. U.S. election took place. Folks have been asking about that, especially in the context recently. Honestly, with all the work we've done with the administration on both sides of the political spectrum down the States, I honestly believe Alberta is in a good place. We've integrated well, we've worked well in the past. We have things that the U.S. definitely needs, and moreover, not just imminent needs. We're literally in between them and Alaska. So the way I kind of look at it is from Texas to Alaska through Alberta. So a ton of things that we do work together, the mineral processing, obviously the energy file, logistics, transport, nearshoring, friendshoring, onshoring, all those things, the ag file. But moreover, it comes down to that Fortress North America concept. And then also, they like authenticity. They like folks that shoot straight from the hip. They like having those conversations, and that's what Alberta is. So I think in that context, you're going to see a lot of good movement. The Premier's been invited to a number of inaugurations from the governors down there as well. She's been invited to the President's inauguration coming up in January, and that's not by chance. That's by a lot of effort taking place. Obviously, with our legislative calendar, we were back in the House latter part of October. We just wrapped up here last week. We had some very key pieces of legislation that passed. Not excluding the Bill of Rights, and then a number of files for parental rights, and obviously some health items and some sports items you've heard about in the papers as well. So we're going to continue to keep working forward. It's been a busy year. I'm really looking forward to taking a couple of weeks off over Christmas. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if I've missed anything, please reach out to the office. If you want to hear about some of these items and specifics, we'll keep working on that. Was at the gun show this weekend, as I mentioned. There's some tomfoolery taking place down in Ottawa again. We just got to weather the storm, folks. We're going to try to keep working with that administration down there, but when we need to, like you've seen us swing it twice so far, we're going to pull out that Sovereignty Act and make sure that Albertans are getting their fair shake, and we're not just going to go along to get along anymore. We're going to make sure we're doing the right things, not only for our province, but for the country and for our trading partners as well. So with that, God bless. Hopefully I didn't miss out too much, and we'll see you sometime soon. Take care.